Welcome to the Draft Brewery. This is Dr. Chris Baker, DC, here for a little deck tech on Mono Black Zombies. This is what I played and finished first place today at the SPDC 32.1 first event of the season here with Oath of the Gatewatch. And a slight rules change in effect for this season is that cards that were previously printed as common in other sets but are now standard legal but have been upshifted in rarity, meaning they are now printed at uncommon or rare or whatever, means they are now legal. They did not used to be legal. So 2 cards in this deck are following that new rule and are basically what make this deck possible. This deck would be complete garbage without them, to be honest. So the 2 cards that this deck is really enjoying the presence of is Grasp of Darkness. Basically, in a deck that's mono black, this is just flatten for 2 mana instead of 4 mana. Really important. And Cruel Revival. Cruel Revival, I don't even know what set that's from. Odyssey or something? I don't know. I started playing in Time Spiral competitively. Destroy target non-zombie creature. Alright. So in the mirror match it's pretty bad, but it's even not that bad. It has a lot of targets, even in my own deck. But it's not the best deck if this is a popular deck. But I figured the most popular deck is the blue-red Prowess deck. So I figured even though it's a 5-mana removal spell, which is really expensive, it's good because the creature can't be regenerated, so it goes through things like Butcher's Glee and Unnatural Endurance. And return up to 1 target zombie card from your graveyard to your hand. So you're getting easily 3 plus 1 mana. Returning a zombie graveyard to your hand is like a 1 mana effect. Destroying a non-zombie creature is like a 3 to 4 mana effect. So you're getting your value out of this card for sure. So the shell in mono black control nowadays, without devotion mattering, is more about you need to make sure you're getting your card advantage. So you got to be playing 4 Read the Bones, 4 Vulturous Haven. That's just like the most important cards in the deck by a mile. You need to be playing early game removal. Grasp of Darkness is one of the best. It can't kill Gurmag Angler, which a lot of other people play and is kind of the de facto delve spell. But it's not that hard to kill Gurmag Angler. You can block with any creature and then grasp it and it should die. But grasp kills every flyer in the format. There's not a 5 toughness flyer except Cluster of Nightwatch. Hooting Mandrills, Cinder Hellion, and anything really. Things that get buffed with, shoulder to shoulder and feet to resistance, all that stuff. It's really just efficient. Also at the 2 mana slot we're running Reeve Soul. Notice a lack of complete disregard. I need tons of relevant plays in the early game to not fall behind, because this is kind of like a control deck. We're just trying to kill their early plays, so having a 2 mana play is pretty important. So that's why Reeve Soul is better than Complete Disregard. Complete Disregard, it will come out of the sideboard in the situations where they have things like Dutiful Attendant, where we're just trying to gain value. So 2 Dutiful Attendants, pretty staple in decks like this because they can loop each other. So in the late game you can just keep blocking Gurmag Anglers for days and recasting Dutiful Attendants, which is good sacrifice fodder as well for cards like Nantuko Husk. Husk isn't the best in this deck, but I like having at least one because it enables us to do a few things. First off, he can be a pretty big threat in concert with certain creatures. Sultai Emissary is kind of the linchpin of the deck, does a lot of work. First off, it's a zombie, so it's the most common target that we're getting back with Cruel Rival, because it's really the only zombie that's dying in the early game. It dies, chumps, or trades, makes a 2/2, which can then hopefully chump or trade to give us time. Again, Shambling Goblin is sort of the same way. If we have a 2-cost can play, we can just sack it immediately to kill an X1 flyer or something like Eldrazi Sky Spawner. Or it even blocks 2/2s on the ground, and it's just a good creature to potentially get back with Cruel Revival. And I have 2 main and 2 in the side just because this deck is a little soft to tokens. Like if they just play like Eldrazi Sky Spawner and Eyeless Watcher and all these things that make 1/1s inadvertently, then our Grasp of Darkness and Cruel Revival are looking pretty crappy. And none of our creatures have a lifelink, so we're going to be pretty behind and we're just going to get swarmed. So Shambling Goblin is supposed to help with some of the tokens too. You can at least like block, trade with a token, and then kill another token. Let's see. Other than that, we want to be able to have at least one Death Touch creature, and in the future, I'm definitely going to consider adding more. Now that cards like Arc Lightning are in the format and stuff, Typhoid Rats, and it's not the best card, but in some matchups, it's just actually really good at stopping people from attacking you. But Fetid Imp is just a little bit better because sometimes flyers can be a problem since we're not running Sultai Scavenger. Vulture Saban is our only flyer, and so 3/3 flyers can be a problem if we don't have 2 Vulture Saban in play. But yeah, another key linchpin to the deck as a zombie as well is Undead Servant. It's just a 4-mana 3/2, but for every other Undead Servant you have in your graveyard, you get another free 2/2 zombie token. So you play the first one out, hopefully it dies or trades with something, either a removal spell or another creature. And then the second one that you play, you get a 3/2 and a 2/2, which is pretty good value. And then third one, you get 2 guys, and the fourth one, you'll get 3 guys. In most games, you won't see them all like that, but if you ever do, that's just such a huge advantage. But usually all it takes is like you play one, it gets killed, you play a second one, you get your advantage, you trade them, and then you can play cards to get them back. So you do Dutiful Attendant or Mortuary Mire, get back on Undead Servant, replay it, get 2 more guys, and pretty solid value to get created in that spot there. And on the other cards in the deck, again, other zombies. 1 Butcher, definitely on 1 Butcher. Don't really want 2 because we don't have that many creatures we want to sacrifice, and this card's expensive, but you want at least 1 because you need to be able to kill things like Sultai Scavenger, or just be able to play a creature and kill a creature. So this is just a very common 2-for-1 card, especially if they have a pacifism effect on one of your creatures, or you just have a creature that's not relevant. Like, frequently a Sultai Emissary is not super relevant in the late game, so you just want to have things to sack, and Butcher's great because it can kill things outright. Again, more payoff cards, Gurmag Anglers, just running 3. We don't have that many ways to super delve in the early game. We do have 2 Duress. I like Duress a lot just because, in all fairness, Treasure Cruise is the best card in the format. And if you're not playing a deck with 4 Treasure Cruise in it, you should probably be, have a good reason. And it's pretty clear a deck like this has a good reason because it makes very good use of having a all swamp mana base, meaning every land taps for black. Evolving Wilds are value because they help us get Gurmag Angler into play faster. And Mortuary Mire is pretty good, but sometimes not worth it. I really only like getting back Vulture Saban Any other creature, I feel like I don't want to time walk myself. I'd almost always rather draw a card, but sometimes just putting a Gurmag Angler on top, and when you know they're gonna have a hard time answering it, it's just really good. So yeah, so the deck, kind of tops out at 5 mana. You don't really want to hit too much more than 5 mana. You've got a lot of card draw, but not a lot of it early. So 22 land could be a little low, especially when you're searching out a bunch. But yeah, I don't know. In the games that I played, like some games I just got completely mana screwed, and some games I got completely mana flooded, and it was, again, not that big of a difference. I think you could run 23 land in this deck and cut, cut one card, and you'll be totally fine. You could cut, a card at random, and it wouldn't matter. But yeah, so let's look at the sideboard and see what I built, because I had a lot of these cards in mind for decks that I was planning on facing. So Duress number 3 for decks with removal spells, card advantage spells, Read the Bones, Treasure Cruise, stuff like that. The full 3 and 4 Shambling Goblins for the token decks, or for like mono red. So we have, a way to block things in the early game. These cards are actually really bad against most decks. They could easily be Typhoid Rats. Going forward, I think I'll make that change. Because, yeah, I didn't play against any token decks, and token decks probably just aren't that good, because most decks in their sideboard should be running Boiling Earth and Chandra's, Fury anyway, to keep the token decks in check. Like if I was going to play blue-red or blue-red control, I would definitely be packing tons of those effects just because they're good. It covers all your bases. So against other control decks, we want cards like Altar's Reap, especially if they're going to run things like this too. If they're going to run Complete Disregard, Oblivion Strike, ways to exile my creatures, even if they're just going to try to Gideon's Reproach, Celestial Flare, Sheer Drop, stuff like that, Altar's Reap is just a good little way to get card advantage, and I like it. Excuse me. If let's say put Pacifism on our Undead Servant. If we Altar's Reap it, it's just got so much more value in our graveyard. Most of our zombies have more value in our graveyard. So it's kind of interesting. I should probably be running one Altar's Reap main, but instead I'm running the one Nantuko Husk to kind of fill that slot, to be able to put other zombies into my graveyard to get them back with Cruel Revival just in case. So that's that. Debilitating Injury is again for early aggro decks, another 2-mana play, and slightly better than Reave Soul in my opinion, because this can kill things like Nantuko Husk. Reave Soul does absolutely nothing against Nantuko Husk if they have one other creature in play. You just sack the other creature and you can't kill the Husk, and the Husk is usually the problem, especially if you're running, again, cards like Complete Disregard. You want to be able to kill things, like Jeskai Sage and Sultai Emissaries, and you don't want them coming back where they can create value. Sometimes even just, again, you'd rather Complete Disregard rather than Reave Soul a Sultai Scavenger. Say, for example, if your opponent's running Corpse Churn or, any other graveyard recursion effect. Butcher's Glee is a 2-of, is pretty solid. +3/+0, lifelink, regenerate. When you know your creatures can be fighting each other in combat. So it's particularly good against Gurmag Angler mirror matches. Typically, if they fight and you can land a Butcher's Glee on your own creature and they do not on theirs, gaining 8 life and killing their guy and saving your guy is all very, very, very good. But I found this card to be a little clunky in this deck. Like, it's definitely deserving of some amount of slots, but I don't know when and where necessarily, because or how many. Just because it's just hard to have that situation come up perfectly. Um, Again, other control decks or other card advantage based decks. You want to play Rakshasa Secret, and I think the guy I played in the finals played a green-black grindy deck. It actually main deck this, I think, and it's pretty good because milling the top 2 of your library helps you with delve spells, which his deck was very centric on, and corpse churning, getting cards back from the graveyard. So just a good mana source on your own, better than Mind Draught in that sense, and being able to just get the guaranteed 2-for-1 unless your opponent has no cards in hand is pretty good. So I like that against, again, Treasure Cruise type decks and any card advantage deck that is not trying to win the game fast. Bitter Revelation, again, this is just kind of Read the Bones number 5. Wherever Read the Bones is good, Bitter Revelation might have a merit for inclusion. It's basically just the black 4C, which is pretty great, but a little expensive, so that's why it's only a 1 of. And then Oblivion Strike. This card's actually really good. I'll probably add a 3rd, I would think. This card's actually main deckable too, but we kind of have Cruel Revival to fill its role in the main deck, and then you can take Cruel Revival out if you happen to run into like the Zombie Mirror. But I don't think this deck is going to be that popular. It takes a very specific type of person usually to want to play mono black. At least I noticed in the standard proper meta, like, people like to play the decks that they like to play. There's no incentives to like try to break the format and build the best deck in terms of like nobody can win $10,000 at a Grand Prix or $40,000 at a Pro Tour. Instead, we're just playing for a few tickets, which is basically just like good-natured competition. But I do like Oblivion Strike, being able to kill everything in the format, and the big thing is that they can't protect it with Feet of Resistance or Center Soul. Again, I learned that the hard way in one of my previous videos. Playing in the Pauper Commander League, I tried to God's Willing my creature in response to complete disregard, and that did not end well for me. So yeah, so the Devoid is actually kind of relevant, which makes me more inclined to play it, and less inclined to play cards that are like Feet of Resistance style decks. I think this deck does really good against decks that are trying to attack. If we want to be a little bit more metagamed, like game 1 is pretty heavily metagamed against creature decks. But yeah, I could see the main deck not being the best against control decks. So being able to run just, like against control, just more discard spells, Dress, Rajaka Secrets, more card draw, Altered Fate, Bitter Revelation, and then relevant removal for whatever kind of cards they're playing. Seems like a game plan for now, but I definitely want to explore more decks in the format again because of the new rarity shift allowance. There's a couple other cards that I think are pretty good. Arc Lightning is, I think, it's not insane. It's just a little upgrade to Twin Bolt, really, because Twin Bolt sometimes just couldn't kill enough, and it would just be really weak in the late game draw steps where you don't really care about the instant speed so much as being able to deal 3 total damage, either 3 to 1 creature, 2 to 1, and 1 to the other, or 2 to 1 and 1 to the face. So I think Arc Lightning's pretty good. I don't think Rolling Thunder is actually that great because ramp doesn't exist. The problem is that all the creatures that would ramp all have 1 toughness and just would die very, very easily. You could play Kozilek's Channeler and like Hedron Caller, Leaf Gilder. You could play Seer's Lantern. I guess there's a lot of ways you could play. Some ways to ramp, but the payoff isn't there card advantage wise. You'd rather just be delving. Right now the format is still centric for you to want to just put things like in your graveyard with either Evolving Wilds or spells. You want to cast turn 1, turn 2, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, sacrifice a creature. So now I've got a bunch of things in my graveyard for turn 5. So now I can do something and play Gurmag Angler. So that's like the turn where you get ahead, is when you can do 2 things in 1 turn because the delve spell that you play costs very, very little. But yeah, so I definitely think Arc Lightning is good. Not sure. I've built a couple other decks, one with Knightly Valor and Totem Guide Heartbeast, and kind of like a white control deck. Yeah, there's a lot of different things to explore. So this is just the deck that I use for today. Hope you enjoyed checking it out. I'll probably get around to doing some replays of my matches, so stay tuned for that. Alright, thanks for watching.